It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
The Hyperspace.
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the hyperspace. Podcasting in the 25th century, the interweb's first and still only podcast. My name is Jared.
Hey, my name's Matt. We're not going to stand on ceremony here. Come on.
Okay.
My name's Lindsay.
There you go.
Yes.
I was waiting.
Tonight we trade Mike for Lindsay, and we're the better for it.
We traded up.
Aw.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
No,
kidding.
Come on.
Mike, he had an extra shift he had to pull down at the nutrient paste factory.
Man. They're working him to the bone, man.
They are, and he said he was going to give us some of that new blackberry cobbler nutrient paste, and I haven't seen a tube of it yet.
I don't know. It's
I
all
think he's
it's all
hoarding
just
that stuff.
I
clear,
was just gonna say,
clear,
sort of the
opaque paste that all tastes the same. I don't know.
Well, anyways, he can't be with us tonight, but of course we do have Lindsay joining us, our great pal. And
Oh,
tonight, I think we're taking a break from science fiction, and we're gonna talk about some science fact.
Nice.
We are going to talk about all three of us have a great affinity for the history of human spaceflight. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to talk about how each of us became interested in this. Perhaps we were influenced by a movie or a trip to Kennedy Space Center or whatever it was. And we're going to finish the show with something Matt has been dying to talk about. The rush of a declassified UFO footage has Matt's brain spinning. We're going to talk about that towards the end of the show. So I think, I would like let's ask Lindsay here to begin with. You are wearing a NASA shirt. You have been a frequent visitor to the Space Center in the past.
oh yeah.
How did all this start?
I was trying to think about that when you asked me today. I was like, how did it start? I don't remember not being obsessed with space. So I was like, what was it? So I think it was when I was younger, like you said, a movie, but it was a show. I got very into morning cartoon that was on Cartoon Network called Sailor Moon. And it was all about girls fighting evil monsters in space. And I was like, that's really cool. And then this was in elementary school. And then we did do a field trip to Kennedy Space Center in elementary school. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it wasn't even as cool as it is now. But I was obsessed then. And I was like, the moon from the stuff, like, I don't know. I just those two things connected to me, and I was obsessed from jump. And I didn't actually go to Kennedy Space Center again until I was a lot older with my sister. But that is
Have you been back recently? Have you been back recently?
I've been a couple times. I went during COVID. I went again with I went by myself, and then I went with a bunch of friends. To introduce them to my Disney. I don't know. I was like, guys, it's going to be so fun. Let's go. And it was awesome. And the Atlanta stuff was all there, but actually they have a whole new section there that I haven't even been to. But the one thing I haven't been to is there's like a space bar, like a spacey themed bar there now.
Oh, really?
Yes. But it used to be so much less expensive to go there. It's like $60 a day to go now. And I found my old ticket from when I went years ago with my sister. And I think we talked about this, but it was $7.
Man. Well,
And that's
Man.
well,
that's when
they're
the
taking
Star
they're
Trek
taking
exhibit.
they're taking a cue from their theme park brethren down the road. They're like,
Uh-huh.
"Hey, man, we can't let Universal and Disney get all this money.
No
We
kidding.
got to jack up prices."
That's
I
not
mean,
right. That's not
the
right.
Saturn V stuff is cool. Like there is a lot to do. So I get it. And it's
I
like,
think
you know,
I think you get your money's worth.
yeah. So yeah, that was what I feel like in my memory. Why do I care about space, or why am I into space? And Sailor Moon was a goofy cartoon show in the 90s. However, I will say the manga, the properly translated manga, it's good. And that's all
Yeah,
I
my
got.
daughter is slightly into Sailor Moon now,
She
but
can borrow them
she
if she wants.
well,
I have them
sh-
all.
her jam is Demon Slayer. Do you know about that?
Oh.
Okay, it's another manga anime thing. I don't know what it is, but I'm like, hey, that woman doesn't have any clothes on, and
Oh my
you wanted to
goodness.
buy the statue. Interesting.
Well, obviously this was a 90s Cartoon Network, so it was heavily censored. There actually
Okay.
wasn't that much bad stuff
Mm.
even ever. But yeah.
Well,
Hey, Matt.
How about
yeah. What's up?
Yeah, tell us. Now, before we move on, Lindsay, did you grow up in Florida?
yes.
Okay, Matt.
Yeah.
Tell me sort of your journey into space nerddom.
I have to give my mom all that credit, I think. My mom was a huge and still is big Star Trek fan. And the very first, I mean, look, the very first movie I was taken to, though I don't remember, was Star Wars. So I was, just a little toddler in Star Wars, whatever it's imprinting on my brain. But the first TV show I remember watching with my family was Star Trek, on syndication. And it was on, I don't know, like once a week on like Thursday nights or whatever it was. And
I know about the problem you had with watching Star Trek.
right, yeah, I never got to see the end. But
Absolutely insane.
but no, it was like Star Trek was the first show I know. It was the first show I remember really watching, and my mom really fostered that. And we moved to Florida, and the shuttle program was really in full gear. I moved in 1980, and through the early 80s they were really putting those things up a lot. And from where I lived in Dunedin, Florida, if you went out and just like where we used to work, or where I used to work with you guys, if the weather was right, you could see the shuttle go up. And
Yeah, I remember that. You could do that.
and we watched we watched every launch that we could. And I remember, this sounds kind of goofy, but as a little kid, I used to like take my dad's flashlight, and I used to go sit on our front steps at night and make them turn off all the lights so I could see all the stars. And I remember shining my light up at the stars, thinking, someday that light's going to go and reach that star and save a planet. And that's how I used to think as a little kid. But I used to love that stuff. And I didn't get to go, to this day, I've never seen, except with you, Jared, a live launch. And even that launch was from a ways away at the Causeway. I never got a chance to go to the Space Center and actually witness a launch, which is like a bucket list for me to this day.
Same.
So, and but yeah, it's all about. And look, Star Wars was great with the toys as a kid. We talked about this a lot, but between Star Wars and Star Trek, I am solidly rooted in space and sci-fi, but I have to give Star Trek most of that credit, because they really took that exploration of space and all that to a next level. So but yeah, man, can't go wrong. And then of course the 80s, the golden age of entertainment, was replete with all kinds of goofy stuff, Battlestar Galactica reruns and all kinds of cheesy B movies, you name it. Space was all over the 80s, and I loved every second of it. What about you?
When we went to see the Discovery
Right.
launch with me and you and Mike, the Sith Lord, we drove over.
That was a heck of a trip.
we left. The launch was supposed to be at like 5 a.m.
Right.
Well,
And it was going to be one of the last night launches.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this was the Discovery's last flight.
It was. And we left at what, like 11 p.m. that night?
Yeah.
Whoa.
We got on, we left the Tampa Bay area about 11 p.m. and drove, the 2.5, 3 hours across the state. And we actually found this pretty decent spot on on a causeway in Titusville,
Mhm.
where we could actually see,
We could see the launch structure in the pad.
yeah, because it was well lit, but we were 11 miles away.
It was far.
Mhm.
But it was just like flat land. There was a bunch of water, and then
Mhm.
but it was all flat. It's Florida. There's
Florida,
no elevation, but we could see it. And seeing that thing take off it's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen.
Mhm.
And we actually have it on YouTube, but or I have it on YouTube. I should probably transfer that over to maybe the Hyperspace channel.
Oh yeah.
Although I couldn't help myself and put copyrighted Apollo 13 music all over it. But I just remember when it was going up, Matt was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah, I was swearing it like a sailor.
Yeah,
It's awe-inspiring, I bet.
when it first, it's on the pad and
The
it takes
bloom.
off, it looked like the sun coming up,
Ah.
and we were at 11 miles
It
away.
was so bright.
Mhm.
And then, like 30 seconds after it launched, the sound hit your chest.
It
And
buffets in like this buffeting of.
It felt, yeah,
I
it
mean,
felt
it
like
was,
somebody pounding you in the chest.
it was louder than any concert I've ever been to. It was deafeningly loud, and that was 11 miles. More than 11 miles from where we were, but like the
Yeah.
buffeting sound of it just coming in on waves after waves, you could almost see the fire coming out and like with the sound of matching the fire. It was crazy. It was great. And I can only imagine if you saw it at the location at Kennedy Space Center going
Oh
up,
my God, I know.
being, a mile away from it versus like 11
Well,
miles.
yeah, I think there's a minimum safe distance of
37
several
feet.
miles.
Yeah,
No, 37 feet.
But you're close. You're a lot closer than we were. So
Yeah, but that was great. And I'm
we used
glad
to work with someone. I'm sorry, real quick. We used to work with someone whose father worked for NBC back in the day, like the old day, and used to run the cameras when the Saturn V's used to go up.
Ugh,
Mhm.
And the
That's
stories he
so
would tell
cool.
about what his father said was just amazing.
And we have there's a guy we work with. He's still there, named Brett. His mother worked in the launch control center
Oh,
at
nice.
Kennedy.
I
Which
think I did know this actually about Brett.
He always had tickets to those bleachers right there.
Man, come on.
And
just once.
So it was,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, I'm like the two of you obviously got interested in it through science fiction as a kid, and had my first visit to Kennedy in 1985. I have a great picture of me
I know the picture.
in a Michael Jackson Beat It jacket, standing with my sister in front of one of the launch pads. And that's from
that jacket's amazing.
Yes, it's the just straight up I thought that was the best jacket in history. But there is a picture of me in the Beat It jacket, and I'm standing in front of one of the launch pads, and that was 1985. And that was when I, of course, being again child of the 80s, they're throwing up, shuttle. There's people shooting fireworks off of my neighborhood.
Oh, shuttles launching. all around
Yes,
you.
I mean, like, come on, July 4th was a week ago. Good grief. But when I visited that first time, that was the bug. Like, that's when I wanted to know more. And at this point, the Saturn V was outdoors. They had not yet
Right.
built the building
Oh.
around it.
Right. I
So
remember that.
it was just laying out in the sun. And we were just, and I saw that thing and I was like, I can't believe this. And so after that, I just wanted to know more about it. And, I remember, my dad had a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica, and I would pull them out and read the NASA chapters. And after the the Challenger exploded, so in the news, they would often mention Apollo 1 as the only other disaster where lives were lost.
Right.
So I went and I read more about Apollo 1 from those encyclopedias, and from there read more about Apollo 13. This was 10 years before the movie came out. And I was just like, oh wow, this is a crazy story. I can't believe this stuff. And so and of course moving here, and me and Matt have taken a couple of trips over there when Matt lived here. But that was one of the cool things about moving down here, was like I got to see, go to Kennedy more often. I went back in 1988, but the shuttles were all grounded then because of Challenger. They were grounded for 3 years. That's where it grabbed me as well as a young kid. Just visit to Kennedy that's started the bug.
Did they have a rocket garden when you went?
Yes, they did.
That is that to me was like, I was like, oh my God. Like you feel like you're in the future standing amongst all of those.
Yeah.
So
and you look up at those capsules that look like this big. You're like, there's a dude in that thing. It's like, holy crap.
I remember
it was mostly dudes.
At the beginning, yes.
I remember when a shuttle would go up, we were allowed to go outside and watch it in school. They would make it an event, which is actually really cool. And I really don't think that that's something they do today. But for the younger listeners, because we have so many younger listeners, back in the day, everybody was like really excited about the shuttle program. And when the Challenger was scheduled to go up, it was an interesting thing because they had a teacher that was picked to go up, Krista McAuliffe. And we were all like, wow, this is so cool. A teacher, we were young. We're like, a teacher's going up and this is so cool. They don't do this kind of stuff. And it was like such a big deal. And I was outside and I saw it blow up, and I saw the whole thing explode. And then they walked us back in, turned the television off, and continued with class. And that's kind of like how you were back in those days. But it was people. It's kind of hard because it's a retired program. It's kind of hard to wrap your brain around it if you didn't live it or grow up around it. How impressive the shuttle program was, and you almost took it for granted about how amazing it really was. That we were putting these things up a lot, and they were doing science missions and satellite recovery and satellite launching and all kinds of stuff in a rocket ship that would go up and fly back. And it was amazing. And, to be honest, we haven't seen this kind of thing in almost 25 years until, SpaceX started to get creative and do these reentry, modules and stuff. And it's just amazing what's happening now. But the gulf between the shuttle program and what's finally back was so long.
I did feel like when I was growing up, it felt like something that was just a thing that happened. Like me waking up into consciousness as a child, whenever that happened, they were doing it. And so I grew up and I was like, we send planes to space and they come back. They're huge space planes, but that's a thing we do. And that's so cool. And then the last one went up and they retired it. And I was like, man,
okay,
what's the next thing we're going to do? And we haven't.
I'm going to throw something out from the 80s that Lindsay, you may have seen it. You may have not. I know for a fact Jared's seen it. And I saw it in the theater and I was so jazzed because I wanted to be in this situation so bad. And there was a movie called Space Camp, and I had Joaquin Phoenix as a young kid in it. And it's such
Leah Thompson was in it.
Leah Thompson was in it. It doesn't hold up. It's about a bunch of kids at space camp, and Joaquin Phoenix's character makes friends with the NASA robot named Jinx.
I have an idea for a show.
What?
A commentary with Lindsay on Space Camp.
Oh, I love that idea. Okay, then I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away.
Okay, I love this.
Oh my God,
We'll all watch it together virtually.
I
Yes.
love that. I love this idea, folks. We're definitely going to do Space Camp, and if you've never seen it, we highly invite you to watch it along with us because this is going to be a fun episode. Yes, I agree.
Leah Thompson and Joaquin Phoenix. How have I not seen this?
Wasn't Kate Capshaw in that too?
Yes, Kate Capshaw was in it, and I think the guy from Lance Guest from Last Starfighter. No.
It was
I could see him. Oh God, what's that guy's name?
I know.
No, he's
I know
from Caddyshack. What? Yeah, man.
I don't know. But yeah, it is crazy. And this movie came out a few months after the Challenger exploded.
Yeah.
Oh.
And everybody was like, no, and nobody went to see it because everybody's like, that's in poor taste. We're not going to watch that.
Yeah.
And Kate Capshaw, who is of course famously Steven Spielberg's wife, and she played Willie Scott in Temple of Doom. Her hair was people
really
said
short.
she looks like Krista McAuliffe. So people were like, what are you guys doing? But it was just poor timing. And
yeah.
This is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a good time.
I'm excited.
This is gonna be a good time.
It's
a good idea.
Goodness gracious. But that brings up, that's a nice segue, Matt, because now I would like to hear from all of you about what is like your favorite, I would say like fictionalized NASA film. And do you have a favorite sort of maybe documentary about the history of space flight that you enjoy? So, Lindsay, please take us there.
I don't know. It's not a movie, but I really, really love the fictionalized show, the For All Mankind, that's on Apple TV right now.
I knew you would say this.
I love this show. It's so melodramatic, but also really good. And it's Matt, have you watched this show?
Haven't seen it.
So it takes place, starts in the 60s, and it's an alternate history starting with the moon landing where Russia lands on the moon first.
Oh, neat.
So the space race just keeps going. Like we keep trying to do the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing. And then it goes into the 80s and we've got a moon base in the 80s. And then by the 90s, we're on Mars, and it's really good. And I love so much. And I sometimes think I literally can convince myself, I'm like, because it feels they do such a good job of like replacing and like splicing together like old footage, but making it this new history that's happening. And things change because of how much more progressive we get a little bit earlier because of spaceflight happening and advancing. And it just feels like a parallel dimension where this really happened.
That's pretty cool.
It is a little bit dramatic. And there's a plot line that me and Jared have talked about that's stupid. But
I have also watched this and found out that Lindsay was watching it, and we talked about it. And the first season, I think, is probably one of my favorites. Because it does present, it's by Ron Moore, the guy who did the Battlestar Galactica reboot.
Yeah.
And it just presents this alternate, hey, okay, well, the Russians got there, so what are we going to do better? And they just keep one-upping each other, and it's crazy. And they're about to drop the 4th season, I think. Now, as Lindsay did say, it in the last season, it tended to be very, it got kind of soap opera-ish.
Yeah.
It kind of got down into the weeds on some stuff, but I do like the broad strokes of the show and sort of this alternate future that they're presenting, and it's pretty compelling.
And
most
you
of the
follow
time.
these people in these positions at NASA, like the NASA flight director, the first it becomes the first female flight director at NASA. You follow this girl as she becomes she's just like a math tech, and she's really young, and then you follow her into being the head of NASA, basically. Spoiler alert, sorry. But you follow all these characters that way all through NASA and the history of NASA, and it's so good.
And each season starts with this newsreel that tells you like the alternate things that have happened. Like, I don't know, one year, Michael Jordan started playing a different sport or something. And it's just all these little pop culture things. You're like
Kennedy doesn't get assassinated, I think is something that happens.
Yeah.
Like different presidents get elected than the ones that we had.
But some things are the same. So it's one of those interesting shows.
And then for a real documentary, I think the Apollo 11 documentary is my favorite documentary maybe ever.
That's a good one.
So good. It's so good. I saw that in the theater and I was like, I was blown away. It was so good.
I saw it in IMAX with our friends Rick and Rob, and it's incredibly impressive. It's comprised completely of, there's no interviews, there's no talking heads. They've just taken this footage that a lot of it's never ever been seen before, and they put it together about the Apollo 11 launch, and it's just really great. I think I told you and Mike you needed to go see it in the theater, and of course you both didn't because you didn't listen to me.
It's so good that you feel like you're living the launch.
Yeah, I watched it.
First moon landing. It's amazing.
I watched it about a year ago with my parents, and it was interesting to get there, because they were there. They watching
it for real.
And my dad's like, "Well, I didn't know that stuff was going on. I didn't know they did this." And it's just really.
I showed it to my cousins who are like, I showed it to them like a year or two ago, and my oldest cousin just turned 18 or is about to turn 18. And we watched it and I had them watch it, and they literally were like, they didn't, they're like Gen Z. They didn't know like anything. And they also didn't know we went after that. Because they were talking about it.
You go once.
Yeah. I've actually realized a lot of people don't realize we went back a couple more times. We went 7 times.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, we went back.
We tried to go 8. But
that's why
one of them didn't make it there.
Yeah.
And they made a pretty famous movie about that.
I was debating but that doesn't feel fictional to me almost. Like that's like, I had another friend who watched Apollo 13 and she literally told me, she was like, I don't know, it just felt like it was too much. Like too many, like really, like all that. And I went, what? That's what really happened.
Yes.
She didn't believe it really happened. She did not believe it. She didn't realize that many things went wrong.
That's interesting.
And I was like, what's real? Does it really happen?
Matt, what's your favorite sort of NASA dramatization or something adjacent to that?
Yeah. I've got 2 that fit that bill. One was The Right Stuff. The movie The Right Stuff from 1983. Great movie. And I remember watching it as a kid, probably because of my mom. And I remember that it's such a great introspective story about these test pilots that got picked into this program, and we're all trying to one up each other and be hot shots and make history. It's just The Right Stuff is a really good movie, and I haven't seen it in a long time, but I would imagine it holds up pretty well. And I remember being so fascinated by it. I did a presentation. I remember, I think it was like 6th grade or something like that. I had to pick somebody to do a presentation. I did on Chuck Yeager. And
okay.
So I did this whole thing on Chuck Yeager. And so I was a big fan of that stuff. And even to this day, I mean, read up on Chuck Yeager's life. Actually, I read his autobiography once, and it's insane what this guy went through. And from World War II and being like an outstanding fighter pilot to being picked for the program and being overlooked and still pushing the boundaries of what flights
atmospheric.
Just absolutely amazing person and an amazing story. The Right Stuff is a great movie, and I recommend everybody watch it at least once. And I'm going to give you an answer that's going to make you laugh and you'll be like, you're so stupid. But Armageddon, I love that movie.
I love that movie too.
I love Armageddon. And you know why? It's such it's the early Michael Bay. It's like rah rah Americana. And it's NASA teaming up with these goofballs to save the world.
So
and I'm
dumb.
like, how can you not love it? But so those 2 movies as far as NASA goes, but as far as documentary goes, I remember watching From Earth to the Moon. Tom Hanks is
Oh, that's
Mhm.
well, that was a dramatization. Also,
yeah, I guess
it was a mini series on
right.
HBO.
And but yeah, I mean, I've watched so many, I can't even like keep track. And anytime
Mhm.
something like comes on
Mhm.
about the Saturn program or the Apollo program,
Mhm.
it's you always want to watch it. And by the way, I've been getting my son every time there's like a SpaceX launch, we watch it on YouTube
Mhm.
live. We watch all the stuff that happens around it. I pull up old Saturn V launches and make him watch it. I'm like, watch this. Because I remember thinking, it's Lindsay. It's funny you're saying like their Apollo 13 had all these issues going on. And I remember when Jared, I think we were at the Space Center looking at the Saturn rocket, and they were saying that there's a million processes in the rocket itself. It's one of the most complicated machines man's ever made.
They say it's still the most complicated machine that's ever been built.
And it's amazing because they're like, look, if 1% of it starts to fail, that means that's still, what, how many, it's 10,000 things going wrong at once in the thing. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's unbelievable when you think about how any of this made it to space and how these people put themselves on the tip of this monster and went up. It's just unbelievable. The Saturn V program is just absolutely insane. But yeah, that's I think where my mind goes. What about you?
Yeah. Well, of course, the elephant in the room is Apollo 13.
Yeah, of course.
That's the
Gold standard.
That's the big one. And I saw that movie in the theater several times when it first came out, and I think it's a good movie. I think it is interesting to listen to that movie with the commentary from Jim Lovell and his wife. They do a commentary on the film.
Oh.
And Tom Hanks actually came to live with Jim Lovell for like a week.
Did Jim know about this?
Yes,
Tom Hanks just showed up.
He did. And so Jim Lovell's actually watching the movie, going, that's all wrong. They did that wrong.
Really,
No,
that's awesome.
That's not how it works. And then sometimes his wife is actually saying, Jim, just be quiet. And he's like, well, I'm just saying that's not how it really should go. And he's saying, he goes, I think I actually look more like Kevin Costner than Tom Hanks. I mean, Tom Hanks is okay, but it's just listening to him talk. And
that's amazing.
But there's a touching part of that commentary where it's when the Saturn V goes up, and his wife on the commentary starts crying, and he's like, "What? Are you okay?" And she goes, "It's just it brings back a lot of memories." And so I really, of course, Apollo 13, I enjoy quite a lot, but I enjoy the supplementary materials around it on various forms of physical media, Matt. I do enjoy that stuff. I also think From the Earth to the Moon, the Ron Howard, Tom Hanks produced miniseries for HBO is a great primer. I mean, that kind of takes you through the whole, all the way up to the last moon landing. And it's actually, I did a thing one time where I watched The Right Stuff and then sort of went right into From the Earth to the Moon, because
that's cool.
The Right Stuff actually sets up a lot of things that are paid off, of course, later in From the Earth to the Moon. But also the Gus Grissom. I found out who Gus Grissom was because there was a starship named the Grissom in Star Trek 3. And I was like, that's a weird name for a spaceship. And my dad was like, oh yeah, that was named after an astronaut who died. And I was like, oh wow, that's awesome. It's not awesome that he died, but I was like,
but they named it after.
Yeah, I was like, that's really neat, And my dad, he's a civil engineer, and like math is his drug of choice. And he's great at math. I'm terrible at it. I've been fortunate to have him help my daughter with a lot of homework. But because it's math that got them to space, And he actually told me about a movie which is fairly recent. It's a movie called Hidden Figures, and I didn't even know.
I was just thinking about that.
I didn't even know. and he said, "Hey, have you watched this?" And it totally flew past my radar because I don't think it was marketed as necessarily a space movie, you
Mhm.
know. And it's by it actually stars a person that me and Lindsay
Mhm.
are working with professionally
I literally went,
right now.
the shit. I go, the woman from Hidden Figures at work.
And and my dad's like, "Yeah, you should watch that." And that movie is, it's telling a story of the African American women sort of who were in the background of this, but the movie itself, it also stars like Kevin Costner, and it plays out sort of in the background of like The Right Stuff.
Hmm.
And it actually has they have actors portraying John Glenn and Gus Grissom, and
I've seen
it's
clips of this actually. Now that I didn't realize what I was
It's such a
watching.
good movie.
it's
Such a
it
good
it
movie.
actually is quite good. And I didn't realize until I watched it that it's a definitely like a good NASA movie, because
'Cause
it's about, I mean, it's about the people at NASA.
it's about all the women who,
Yes.
especially like you said, the African American women who
Mm.
did all the math. Like
Yeah.
they did all the calculations, all the like
Uh,
calculations.
until they got a big IBM that replaced everybody.
But I think
But
I've seen a picture of a like a woman like standing with like a stack of math that she did that's like taller than her, like
well,
a real like historical NASA photo, and it's like all these like the name is, it's in the title.
if
It's
I
like
get
these
a
hidden
chance
people
to
who.
if I get a chance to work with that actress, I'm just going in. I'm like, okay, let's talk about NASA, because that was really cool.
That's cool.
And for documentaries, there's a documentary, I think Apollo 11, like Lindsay said, is great. Matt, if you haven't watched it, you need to reevaluate what you're doing with your life. Um, the documentary, it's also called For All Mankind. It's a documentary from 1989. It was just released on a Criterion 4K Blu-ray, and it is about the Apollo program basically from start to finish, but it's edited in a way that's it's very unique.
I'm sure
And
I've seen it. It sounds very familiar.
you might have.
I don't think I have.
It's a good one. And it has interviews with a lot of astronauts now who, of course, have passed away. Another great one was called When We Left Earth. This was on I think it was on A&E like 10, 15 years ago, but it was special because they actually got Neil Armstrong to sit down for some interviews. And that guy
Wow.
he was notoriously private
Mhm.
in his later years. And you almost like never saw him give interviews. But here he was. He's just like this guy that looks like a grandpa, and it's like, that's holy crap, that's like Neil Armstrong.
I think about
That's
that a lot. I'm like, I was alive when Neil Armstrong was alive, and I wonder like when will future generations like revere his name? Like he's the first person who ever
well,
walked anywhere other than Earth. Like it's amazing, and he just was
no,
like you just said, like this guy who didn't talk about it a lot later, was super chill, didn't really care, didn't make a
yeah,
big deal about it at all.
yeah. Now they did make a movie with Ryan Gosling about him, which
It's
I thought was
first man, first man.
First Man,
Yeah,
and I thought it was okay. I thought it was a little dry, but I think it did a good job of, Neil Armstrong was a bit of an oddball.
he was kind of dry.
He was very unto
Like
himself, and so it was interesting that he was the first man to walk on the moon. And you're right, Lindsay. It's like in 300-400 years, people will still. He's in the history books forever.
forever. That as
Yes.
long as we have them.
And the only other time I saw him in public was he came to the opening of Space Mountain in 1975 at Disney World.
What?
He went
Mhm.
there. He went to the
Wow.
opening, and they're like, "Hey, we got
That's
Neil Armstrong here."
amazing.
But hey, look, there's Mickey Mouse in a spacesuit.
Oh my god. I love that ride too.
But
Isn't it amazing though that in Lindsay, obviously your full lifetime, but Jared, we're almost 50 years old and we haven't been to the moon since before we were, We were born.
which we're about to go back there
Artemis? That's why I'm like, so I haven't been to a launch because I feel like it's so, they can get canceled and stuff so easily. And they always are on days I work, like always. But you were, sorry if I cut you off, but
No,
they're about to do the Artemis launches. And I'm like,
it's gonna be amazing.
The first crewed launch to the moon, I'm there. I'm calling off. I'm getting a hotel.
Yeah.
I'm going.
It's gonna be great.
I think you have to. I mean, if you have the means and you're around here, you have to go watch it. It's because it's, that SLS launch system rivals the Saturn V in like power, and it's going to be
I can't even
show.
imagine what that's going to experience that in person must be, to have a rocket like that go up around you.
Bring the family, Matt. Come on down.
I'd love to, man. Come by myself.
We could do a hyperspace episode
with 11 miles away. Even like I don't need to be at 11, but like no one of my means will be in the bleachers. That will be full of rich people. But I don't care where I have to be.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. I think there's ways in.
One of the
my
favorite.
What ways?
We'll find out.
We
have a podcast. We are the only podcast on the interwebs. We will get a pass.
We could go with our little press pass and put it on our little hat.
We'll just say we have the podcast, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's you."
Oh, okay. Well, come on in, front row seats. But one of my favorite things about that Apollo 11 documentary is just seeing the mass of humanity, like all these old station wagons and vans and cars just lined up for miles. And everybody's just like laying on the hood of their car, and everybody's got their radios out.
I got to do something not quite like that, but like when I was in college, there was like this big meteor shower that was supposed to happen on a really like no moon night that was supposed to be really great, and it was really great. And my whole like town in Gainesville, which has pretty low light pollution, like especially back then. Now it's a little bit more developed, but we all just lined up our cars along the road, and everybody was just like laying on their cars and watching
that's pretty wild.
The meteor shower. And I was like, I feel like that's the closest I've ever gotten to something like that.
Oh, you know what? It's funny you talking about like, astronomical events like that. One thing I haven't seen in person yet is two things that I want to see. I haven't seen a real perfectly clear picture of the Milky Way yet. And I want to see the Aurora Borealis coming in too. And I haven't seen either of those really where I feel like, especially the Milky Way, I haven't seen a great where the sky is just the entire, lit up.
You got to go to like a dark sky, like certified park. I'm trying to do that in October.
I'll be honest. I remember being at the top of the mountains in Colorado at 14 years old, hiking in the mountains for 3 weeks, and it's pitch black out there, and I still don't remember seeing it. It's probably right above me.
Oh.
But actually, what I remember was being fascinated by seeing satellites when I was in Colorado at night. You just see them constantly moving above you, and I keep trying to show. I get my wife outside. I'm like, "Look, there's a satellite." She's like, "She can't see it." I'm like, but that stuff fascinates me. But
there's the space station goes over. There's a website where you can track where
at
you
5
can go
a.m.
out.
5 a.m. out to like at 5:05 every day. If I'm up and I look out my window to the north, I can see it.
That's
it's just this bright light that's moving real
In fact,
fast.
we saw that. Remember, Jared, before the shuttle went up, Discovery went up, we saw the ISS go over.
The guy on NASA radio was like, if you look up right now, you'll see it, the space station go over. And we all looked up, and there it was.
And then maybe like
can you believe they're just going to crash that into the ocean?
Might be for the best. I don't know. Might be for the best.
But just like they're not going to keep any of it. Like, come on.
Well, they need to get up there. In Starfleet needs to build that space dock.
I know,
and they can start preserving that stuff.
I just think of it like kids have grown up like me, and like in the 80s and 90s, like the shuttle program was ubiquitous. It was happening. It was just always happening. Mm-hmm. Like kids have grown up, and the ISS has just always been up there, and people have always been living in it. Mm-hmm. Like people have been living in space their whole lives.
I don't think people even realize that it's up there. There's so many people that have no clue that there is a space station in orbit. To your point, it's been in orbit for kind of unbelievable amount of time.
Well,
I know.
It's interesting.
Sounds like a terrible ride, by the way, to be stuck in that for like 6 months.
Oh yeah, apparently it smells terrible.
Oh, I can only imagine.
But
you can't open the window and let it out.
I did a VR It wasn't like super high def, but did like VR in the space station, and even just at like the low quality that was. It's like,
As we approach this new era, once Orion starts to fly and all that stuff, I just wonder, because we as just as kind of a people in general, this happened in the Apollo days, it happened with the shuttle, is that it becomes white noise in the background, and we're like, and nobody pays attention to it until something bad happens.
Yeah, you're right.
And so, I mean, I would say for the, since we're going to the moon, ostensibly trying to build a moon base, I mean, that's like complete Arthur C. Clarke science fiction stuff. And, I think it's obviously people like us who are already interested in it. We're going to definitely follow it. But the public at large, I mean, once we go back to the moon, it's going to be awesome. Everybody's going to be watching. We're going to watch them land. We're going to watch them walk in probably the highest def that we've ever been able to do that. People can just live stream from the moon now, which is going to be crazy.
TikToks from the moon.
Yeah, exactly. But how long until that again becomes, like, oh, well, yeah, they're going back to the moon today. I mean, they got tired of it over the course of 3 years in the 60s and 70s. They said in Apollo 13, one of my favorite lines is, "You've made a trip to the moon as exciting as going to Pittsburgh." And which is just completely mind-blowing. And but
I think they did a good job for a lot of the ISS, like making it like fun. Like I think it depends on the astronauts who go and what they do up there and what they do. Like that I forget his name, Chris something, the Canadian astronaut who was like singing the like David Bowie song up there, and that was like really popular video. Like they just have to like keep doing stuff that people will want to watch them do. I don't know.
The astronauts have to have charisma.
Yeah,
and
like he was so great.
So to expand on that point right there, in my opinion, I think one of NASA's biggest failings over the past 30 years has been it has a horrible PR unit, and it's being run solely by the nerds. And I'll tell you, it works for some population, but when you want to get mass appeal out there, you can't let the nerds take control of naming things. And like I remember when the Mars rovers landed, and that was a huge deal. When those rovers were touching down on Mars, I remember, to me, that was the most exciting thing. One of the most exciting things in space ever happened. And they're like, it's starting to approach the Yogi Bear rock. And I'm like, God damn. I'm like, get these guys out of here. Get like a really cool Hollywood like PR person to be like, start naming things that are really cool, make it interesting, make it sound badass. And don't let the nerds get in, and let the nerds work on the math, and then get a marketing team to work on like what makes people like it.
Yeah, they do some of it, like the video where they like the 7 minutes of terror or whatever, when they like explain like what it's going to be like, and then like when the rover module is like descending, and then they're like doing it live, and I watched that live like till 2 a.m. and it was so cool. So they do sometimes do a good job.
I agree, but they need rock stars going up to the moon. They need people that look like movie stars, that are dynamic and awesome.
I hate that you're right, but it's
true. It's interesting you say that, because think about the last time space was big news, and it's when William Shatner went up in a rocket at 90 years old. And I mean, that was a story that had a narrative to it, because Captain Kirk William Shatner was going to be the oldest man ever to go into space. And that story, it fascinated the country for a couple of days. I think space, it still has the ability to do that every once in a while. And unfortunately, most of it revolves around tragedy. Of course, when the Challenger exploded, I mean, obviously, America had malaise had set in. Oh well, I mean, it's a teacher. That's kind of cool. We'll let all the kids at school watch it.
Oh, that documentary also very good.
Oh yeah, the one on Netflix they did. That was a good one.
Sorry.
There's a lot of crazy BS that went on with that Challenger thing.
Yep.
Like, there's icicles hanging from the damn thing. You think maybe, pump the brakes.
Yeah, as much as we love NASA, I think we also all can acknowledge the
fallibility,
the disregard for safety and for advancement. Yeah, not good.
But when something like that happens and the brakes are put on, it's almost like, especially you think about how divided everybody is today with various issues, but when something like that happens, it's almost like the president comes on TV and talks about it. Like, we lost 7 people today. And it still feels like, and when it happened with Columbia as well, when Columbia broke up, it was another. Now I woke up that morning and I was watching the news and I was like, holy crap, I can't believe this has happened twice in my life. I mean, my lifetime, that, the Columbia, the first shuttle to ever fly, went up. But it does have, I think people still kind of innately, whatever your political beliefs or wherever you fall on that, space is almost sort of like unifying to people, because everybody wants those people to succeed, because it's something that's, aspirational and cool. And it's different than this earthbound stuff that we deal with. I just hope that when we start sending people back there, it's not, 1 or 2, and then we're like, okay, well, hey, that just gives me an easier chance of getting a seat on the bleachers for this SLS launch that's coming up.
Me
but
too.
No, you're right. And they need something besides just frog experiments and something, boring. They need to make it engaging. I mean, listen, I think, when Elon Musk put his Tesla in orbit, it was a stunt, but it was interesting. And what was so cool about it is you got to see a live stream of the dumb car in space. But the fact that you could see it in 4K, the fact that you now have cameras that are going to go with them to the moon, brings all of us on board with them, which no one's ever had. You just had to see 8mm film that they brought on.
Yeah.
These are now going to be live streams that maybe with Starlink and stuff like that, you'll be able to actually get great connection and actually be on the rocket and see it happen. So, I mean, if they're smart, they'll really engage the students. They'll make this one of those things that they, especially the public school system, really makes this part of their curriculum and engages them at the right age and brings them into this program, because this is what's going to foster kids like us, 40 years from now, and make the next NASA scientists and mathematicians and nerds that name things wrong.
I wonder if they'll be able to see the James Webb from where they.
So it's funny you say that.
It's like orbiting at the Lagrange point behind it like to us.
Oh, maybe.
So
if we can get a permanent spot on the moon, something like the James Webb Telescope on the moon, being that much further out than we are now from Earth, might be fascinating too. There's so many possibilities right now. And it's almost a shame that I'm almost 50 years old. I wish I was like turning 20 again, because there's so much going to happen in the next 25 years. It's going to be so interesting. And I'm going to be a senile old man when it's all complete. But you're
well on your way.
I know it's true. But, I feel good for my kids, because my kids are going to benefit from this kind of stuff. And I hope they get to do it. I hope that it's done right, so that they get excited about it and stay excited about it.
I think I feel a little hope, because I'm like on TikTok and I get a lot of spacey themed TikToks, and a lot of it is people who are really excited and talking about, like, they're talking about the new thing that came out about like them using the pulsars to measure.
I know, I saw that
gravity waves
crazy.
And stuff. And like, how many people are getting excited about that? Because I was thinking about it earlier, and I was like, it wasn't like NASA as a organization that got us excited. It's like the stuff they're doing, and it's space, and it's like the mysteries of space. And I feel like making that more a part of it too, not just like, what can we do in zero gravity? What kind of bubbles can we make? You know what I mean? Like focusing on what's out there. What's out there?
What someone needs to do is the people who go up there they absolutely need to do what Lindsay is saying, but they also need to build a replica of the monolith.
Yes.
On the moon.
Oh my God.
And it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Get that tourism stuff ready.
It's going to happen.
People to go see it.
The people who are doing this, I want them to be wearing Starfleet patches on their uniforms.
Yes.
And Rebel Alliance symbols, on their backpacks. I mean,
and make the spacesuits look like that.
Yes. Because I kind of have a feeling that's going to happen, because the nerds who are coming up and are going to be able to do this, they have been injected with all this great sci-fi nonsense, and they're going to say, hey, we're going to go over there and build a replica of the monolith because there needs to be a monolith on the moon.
That'd be so great.
That
has to happen.
Well, because I was thinking about this, and I was like, when I was younger, I thought I was going to be an astronaut. I was like, I'm going to go into the Air Force, and I'm going to be a pilot, and I'm going to be an astronaut. And then I was like, I'm too short, my vision's bad, and also I don't like people telling me what to do. So that didn't happen. But my age group, that's who's going now. Younger
I know.
than me.
Isn't it funny? That's the demographic.
And that's what I've grown up with, all this stuff. So hell yeah, it better put.
Yeah, I mean, all me and Matt can do is grab our X-wing and Enterprise models and go do this.
I don't know. Shatner made it up, guys. There's still hope for you.
Hey, aspirational. And they have taken. They took Luke Skywalker's Return of the Jedi lightsaber hilt up in the space shuttle, one of the last times, and they just said, hey, look, here's Luke Skywalker.
Here it is.
And you already see some astronauts who there's a window on the space station that looks like the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon.
Mm-hmm.
And they've already said, these astronauts know exactly what they have there. And that's the kind of stuff I like to see. And like Matt said, that's the kind of stuff that's going to engage people. This guy not only can do 7,000 calculations in his head in 2 seconds, but they also like Mr. Spock. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's going to drive this. But, Matt, I just mentioned Mr. Spock, and I want you to be able to have your time here.
No, I'll tell you what, this has been such a good discussion. Why don't we do this? Why don't we table this and we'll come back with a part 2? Because I think this conversation is too much fun. And I want to hear a lot of your brainstorming and thoughts on aliens in the universe. But I look, this has been a great episode. Let's not just drag it out, man. Let's
part.
Come on.
Well, that deserves its own episode, certainly.
I mean, listen, guys, we got to get Lindsay back. We're going to have ourselves a space camp commentary. Cannot wait.
I'm so excited.
Best is such a great idea. We're going to talk about aliens in the universe and maybe here. My God, the hyperspace season 7, guys. We're rolling here. Every Monday we're dropping stuff. You got to stay tuned. You got to tell your friends. Get on social media. Learn about the only podcast on the interwebs. Join Lindsay, our friend. Hear these cool discussions and join us every Monday here on the Hyperspace.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.